Going on, guys? Welcome to Overtime Athletes. A little bit different video for you guys today. What I wanted to do is I wanted to make a video that basically showcased how you can have a world-class facility where you can really develop athletes from the youth all the way up to professional level for pennies on the dollar. So the reason why this sparked this was I've actually had a decent amount of our online coaches from our coaching program come into our facility, come visit us across the entire world this past summer. And one of the #1 things that all of them said was, I expected it to be like this grandiose palace with state-of-the-art stuff. In fact, it's quite the opposite. There's no chrome and carpet in here. There's no mirrors. I built this thing literally in the beginning for less than $20,000. However, obviously I've invested more throughout the way, but it's to be able to show you. If you guys don't know my story, I started off on the south side of town in 800 square foot where I rented from my former business partner, built my coaching business up. We then flipped it to 1,200 square feet about 2 miles down the road from here. And then we ended up landing in here where we have now OTA headquarters, where we have about 5,000 square foot of gym space and a little bit more for our offices. As you can take a look around, very simple, right? It's warehouses out here. You can see we're in a neighborhood, so there's not much to it. So real simple, you know, they come in, we use these bay doors. As you can see here, we're in Central Florida. There is no AC. In fact, my athletes prefer it. We have fans in here, but my athletes during their classes turn it off. This is the absolute dog pound in here. This is where we create monsters. So you could come in. This is actually a prettier front desk than what we used to have. A lot of this was old junk and Facebook Marketplace stuff that I originated with. We have some t-shirts from sale. This is where we usually greet our athletes. The athletes tend to check in, or now we're starting to have them check in on the app. But real simple, where we greet our new people, our new prospects, be able to talk to them. Nothing fancy about it. I'm pretty sure you can get this for like $100 on Wayfair. Moving over, you can see our common area. Real simple. I bought these tables from a kitchen outlet, I want to say for about $100 a piece. You have some old fold-up tables. Again, nothing fancy about it. We invested in a couple high tops over here so parents can come watch their kids, right? Make it a little bit more accommodating for them. Over here, we invested in a water machine. You know, it was a reverse osmosis one so that the kids, the athletes can have water as they come. Couple cubbies here, nothing spectacular whatsoever. I want to say I got this off Marketplace too for about $20, and this thing is standing the test of time. So nothing real fancy as far as our common area goes. But again, this is by design. This isn't for everyone. It's an extremely gritty gym. It's extremely bare bones. The work is the big thing. That's what we feature here. Our service, our coaching, and the work that the athletes put in. I don't want anything fancy. I don't want anything state of the art, right? I want to go back to the old days where it's more about the grind. Now, obviously, we have some technology as far as things that we test in and stuff like that. So I don't want to fully contradict myself, right? Because those are useful things to be able to track and measure our athletes. But when it comes to the actual work, it's all bare bones in here. Come over here real quick. Usually this is where our athletes get started. I invested a little bit more in this turf. It's ready to go again. This was about 6 or 7 years back. But however, when I first started off, I looked online. I found out in the middle of the state, about 2 hours, people that were selling used recycled turf. And it actually came from the Texas A&M practice field. They rolled it up, brought it over to some, country place over there. I went, loaded it in our truck, came out here, rolled it out. Super aggressive on our knees. It was like running on concrete, had little black pebbles in it the whole time. But that's where I started off. If you look at some of those old videos, there's like hash marks and lines. But again, I probably spent about $600 on that whole thing. My dad used to lay floors, so me and him rolled it out. We laid this one too. This one has a little bit better padding. Obviously, because we predominantly do a lot of the stuff on the turf, this was something that I eventually had to reinvest in. And every about 5, 6, 7 years, we reinvest back into it. Coming over here, we have a couple machines, have a couple resistance bands. We have our hurdles over here. We have our hip circle bands over here. If you think of this area right here, this is where our athletes kind of come in before the warm-up, right, takes place on the turf. This is where they can foam roll, they could stretch out. There's some yoga mats here, there's some different pads, some different things that we've utilized and I've gathered throughout the years. I started off with 2 foam rollers, right, that were literally PVC pipes. So you don't even need to buy straight up, foam rollers. Again, I use regular PVC pipes. I bought a long tube, I cut it in half, and that's what my athletes used to use to be able to foam roll out. Now, obviously, like I said, keep reinvesting every single month along the way. We're able to have different things, lacrosse balls, stuff like that, for the athletes to be able to utilize. Looking down, you can see we have our turf stretch. This is about 35, 40 yards of turf, I'm sorry. I have little hash marks here. That's just tape. It's Gorilla Glue tape, all right? It's just nothing fancy, nothing special about it. We have some box jumps down there where we usually line them up against the wall. I bought that pull-up bar that we utilize for different things, whether it be hanging bands and stuff like that. Just that kind of anchor down. I actually bought that from, I believe, a fabricator for like next to nothing. Coming over here, you can see this is where we store our med balls. When it comes to what we do here, especially with ballistics, I tell our athletes to get as violent as they possibly can, have intent when they're throwing these things. I'd rather you ruin these. I'd rather go through hundreds of these, right? Because I know my athletes are throwing them with intent and violence. So that's something that we might spend on, that we consistently go through. We have some Swiss balls here, very simple. Have some ab wheels, some different barbells. One barbell that we did invest in is gonna be the safety bar. I think it's crucial, I think it's really good, not only for some of the youth athletes, but just to get a different stimulus with some of our higher level athletes. Coming over here, we have a batting cage. This is actually brought to us by Mr. Bichette. If you guys know Bichette Senior, one of a great friend of us. We trained Bo for a long time. One of the off seasons they were hitting in here, so we had that up, and then a lot of our high school and collegiate athletes tend to use it now. Over here we have our box jumps. As you can see, these things are ragged out. We bought a new set. However, I bought the first set. I used to have a wooden box that I actually built myself. And so that was the first investment we made. And the first one we did was used, and we bought them from a gym that shut down up the road. All right, so I didn't start off by buying that. I actually started off, if you look at any of my old vertical jump videos, you'll see me jumping on a box. That was something I built, all right? So I went to Home Depot over the weekend, bought some plywood, bought some 2x4s, and actually built something that raises up. So it was next to nothing. Coming over here, we got a couple sleds. This is where we kind of store that, use that. This apparatus right here was actually, we worked with a guy, a doctor, forgive me, I forget his name. I thought it was a really cool thing and we wanted to feature, and we kind of did a collab on it. Something we still utilize, I think it's great, but it basically is another apparatus for box jumps. It's just been one of those things. It's probably the most expensive piece of equipment that we have in this gym. So coming over here, you'll see this is kind of like a boneyard of stuff. Sprinkled around, one thing, I started off with this. I found this on Marketplace. It's a Nordic hamstring curl. It also acts as like a sissy squat. We usually predominantly use it for Nordic hamstrings. And then we went ahead and bought a couple more as we started to really grow the business. But again, we started off with something that cost me maybe 50 bucks. Actually, back in the day, forgive me, it wasn't Facebook Marketplace. I'm showing my age now. It was actually Craigslist. For those of you the old heads will remember that website. Got a couple of racks over here. We had to install these because our group started to grow. We outgrew our racks over here. Again, these are pretty simple, but again, we didn't have these when we first started off. In fact, this was all platforms for stone loading. We used to be big into the strongman stuff. That was what me and my former partner, business partner, competed in. He introduced me to that game. I absolutely loved it. Flipping tires, lifting stones, overhead pressing logs. You'll see our racks. This is kind of our dumbbell space right here. So we have a mismatched thing of kettlebells. Again, all gritty, nothing fancy about it, nothing clean about anything that we're doing here. These dumbbells are actually the nicest dumbbells I've actually ever owned. I inherited with my former business partner, and all of those were mix and match. If any of you athletes remember the old days, some of those if it was 75 or above, that handle was probably bent and you're struggling to get it up because it's all lopsided and dilapidated. But that's because we bought all of those just used and would piece together an entire one. We didn't even have a nice dumbbell rack, right? I ended up buying this from a gym, the same gym that we bought the box jumps out of. And you know, we're able to get a full rack. It's just because it started to get to a point where our athletes were like, you know, some of them, they couldn't go heavy because those dumbbells were so clunky. But again, this is our dumbbell rack space. We kind of have our benches, stuff like that. Over here, we still have some of our strongman stuff and our functional stuff. We have some kegs, something that I use, love to use, whether it be like keg carries. We might also utilize those every now and then with our Gen Pop classes. We do run Gen Pop classes in the morning. So sometimes we use different things. We have some sledgehammers, some club bells down the line we reinvested in. But the most expensive thing that we get into that's like the bread and butter is two things. Is number one, turf, and number two is gonna be our racks. So I actually designed these racks. I worked with a company when we were getting into here. I believe they actually went out of business or they might have been bought out. But it was a guy who I believe worked for Sorinex, and then he was kind of a fan of the channel, and we kind of worked something out, and I love this. These were Full Metal Industries. These were absolute tanks. They're high grade steel. And what we did was basically took a traditional half rack. So again, my biggest thing was I wanted this to mimic like a college weight room, right? So I wanted to have those half racks. College have full racks, right? But I want to do the half. We did a fat bar on this side, right? And had some different, different widths as far as the pull-ups go. And then we did a little bit higher traditional pull-up on that side. Have your pins, have your racks. We have our benches that we pull up. Everything extremely straightforward, nothing crazy about it. We have 3 of these. We've ran 37, 40 different athletes at a time in a class. We've even ran seminars where we have 100 people. We're able to rotate through just because of how we've methodically laid it out. Keep coming this way. As you see over here, there's some farmer bars, belts, stuff like that. You got some chalk over here. You have some different things as far as, collars, stuff like that. Moving on to kind of take a sneak peek into the back area. So moving into what we call the war room. You guys come back here. Nothing fancy about it. In fact, you could check this out. This is going to be the men's bathroom, right? There's a couple areas for them to get ready. It actually, on the other side where the water was, this was a 1 bathroom, right? So what we actually did was, this was an actual kind of a kitchenette for the business that was here before. Don't tell the city or whoever's inspector is, right? Because we built this out. We actually put a shower in it, nothing crazy about it. Built this with a guy, very simple, bare bones, nothing to the bathroom, little shower. Guys can come in here if it's, they got to go to school or whatever it might be. Again, you're looking, it's raw, bare bones, there's nothing to it. Obviously, when we increased the amount of athletes we had, and we had a lot of Gen Pop clients, we went ahead and created a women's restroom. They like to have things a little bit tidier. Some of our guys in here aren't the most tidy. So you'll see in here that there's gonna be a couple showers, another bathroom, real simple locker room for our ladies. But this is where kind of our coaches, there's coffee, we have a fridge, we have a couple desks here for our online guys when we start to meet. But really, this is kind of what we call the war room, because this is where we have our conference, our meetings. We all get together. We talk different things of, strategy, talk about our athletes, what we're going to do. We sit down in here. We talk with parents when we're selling them, things of that nature. We just use this as kind of like a multi-purpose room, if you will. I'll give you a quick sneak peek real quick. This is kind of our sales office. It doubles as one of our other coaches' offices. But as you can see in here, you can just take a quick peek. There's a couple things in the wall, but this is one of those rooms that I think is paramount to a gym success, where essentially when we're going to sign an athlete up, right, before they're signed up as an actual client, we want to take them off the gym floor and be able to actually go through a full process to be able to help them understand why we're doing what we're doing, and if they're a good fit and if there's something they want to get into, right? So I think it's paramount when you're closing in the gym that you have to pull them off the gym floor and talk to them. Now, when it comes to like meeting with coaches, agents, parents, we usually use the war room, which is our conference room, if you will. And then finally, I'm gonna show you guys a little sneak peek of my office. Come up. All right, so last but not least, as you can see, we're up here in a loft. This is absolute makeshift. This was actually built out when it was there. You could step in here, kind of check out my office. It's not the cleanest, but it is organized, right? So two things is obviously, I like a lot of desk space. I got the whiteboard table. I have some of my stuff up here, my calendar. I have my 2 screens. This is a must, right? Have the standing table. That was something that I knew I needed to invest in to be able to increase my productivity. But yeah, there's nothing crazy about it. This is the office. And yeah, that's where I get all the work done. As you can see, there's cameras and lights because part of this is we produce content within here. A lot of whiteboards, always writing down ideas, trying to help you guys out, trying to strategize how to continue to grow this business and serve you guys more. So I hope that helps. Look, my whole point of doing this was to show you that you can have a world-class facility. You could work with high-level athletes that travel from all across the world, whether it be Olympians, professionals, right? And we develop them from the youth level in our local area all the way up. And it doesn't take much. What I did, I started off with about $20,000 that I saved up, maybe a little bit more. I essentially built this thing out, bare bones. You could take a look at some of those old videos where it wasn't even painted, looked raggedy as hell. And every time I earned a little bit, I took 20% of everything I did each month. I would save that up as my reserve, and I would continue to reinvest it back in their gym. As I always tell coaches, don't be gym rich and pocket broke. Don't go take out a bunch of money from investors. Don't go take out a bunch of loans and bury yourself where you're making $20,000 a month, but you owe 25. You're gonna be a slave to your business the rest of your life. You're not gonna be able to serve as many athletes as you want, and it's always gonna be that rat race. So start small, start lean, right? Don't overdo yourself. You can build it from the ground up for next to nothing. Hope that helps. I'll talk to you guys next time.